Welcome back to potentially a major development going into the Australian Grand Prix weekend with both Red Bull and Ferrari, revealing they have made some positive steps over the last few days in terms of their simulator work. That is giving them more confidence they can actually beat Ferrari this weekend at Melbourne. What's actually going to happen though when we get to the track? Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new. As always, I greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into today starting right about here. Firstly, just to mention, the camera might look a little bit different today. I don't know what happened to my camera. It's had a complete meltdown, so I'm using my phone. I've got like a Piastri workaround. It looks okay to me. Let's dive in. Oscar Piastri has resigned a new deal with McLaren until we think potentially 2030. Now this has been coming, I imagine, for some time. I think it was no real surprise that eventually they were going to sign this deal, but announcing it now on the eve of the Australian Grand Prix weekend is certainly a time to do so, given he's an Australian driver, of course. It's a multi-year deal. Again, we have these teams now in this phase of not actually telling us what the deal is and how long it lasts for, unfortunately, but that's where we are right now as a sport. Rumor has it, according to the Daily Mail, so maybe a pinch of salt in there somewhere, it's a £20 million deal that apparently puts him on par with Lando in terms of his earnings. That's actually particularly interesting, and fair play to Mark Webber and the team that has made this happen because, look, Piastri last year obviously wasn't as strong as Lando was in terms of qualifying pace, and was obviously, in the end, not the championship rival that Lando kind of became towards the end of the season. But we know that Piastri has got the potential. McLaren certainly see it in him, and we're at a point now where reportedly they're going to be on the same amount of money. That, of course, makes it very clear that there is absolutely no intention at McLaren to have a number one, number two dynamic. Reportedly, his deal may take him until the end of the decade. We're talking potentially 2029. Of course, it's announced it's a multi-year extension and his contract already expired at the end of next year. So he already had 2 years left. That's now becoming at least 4 years, maybe 5 years. This makes sense for Oscar, I think, for sure, with the way that the car currently is. This makes sense for McLaren, I think, with the pairing that they currently have. So maybe it's a no-brainer, but I will say for other teams, this is a bit of a question mark because let's say you are Red Bull Racing. Christian Horner was asked some questions during Drive to Survive. If you had to get one of the McLaren drivers, who would it be? Look, Red Bull have targeted Lando for years and couldn't get him. Then, of course, Christian Horner is saying during the course of the Drive to Survive show, oh no, we would get Oscar if we had the choice. Do I believe that? I'm not so sure. Now the choice is either not there or has been made substantially more difficult because let's say Verstappen was to leave, get a better opportunity at another team where the car was performing better. Whatever happens this season at Red Bull, who would they get? Piastri has been a key name in those types of conversations. Now I suppose Red Bull, if they were in that situation, would probably look at George Russell, but of course, Piastri is now locked up. Speaking of Red Bull, their former sporting director Jonathan Wheatley is going to start on the 1st of April. He left the team, of course. It was a big announcement last year with all the drama that was going on with Newey and various other individuals leaving the team. Wheatley was another big one who's been there for a very long period of time. He's joining as the team principal at Kick Sauber. That's now official. His gardening leave is coming to a close, and he can actually go ahead and do exactly that. Yuki Tsunoda has been linked to the Cadillac Drive. We've talked about the last couple of days, the Bottases, the Parisis, maybe the Danny Ricks, certainly the Colton Hertas of this world. But all of a sudden, Tsunoda is getting a lot of credit and a lot of gas when it comes to these conversations. Makes perfect sense to me. But it's still interesting that Tsunoda apparently is being considered, at least by some, as a real contender for the Drive next year, and potentially beyond as well. Quick weather report update. This is the Australian Grand Prix expectations. Saturday is going to be hot, like seriously hot. It's Melbourne, the weather could change, but Sunday's going to be super hot. This is very interesting for a number of the different teams because setting a car up for a Grand Prix weekend is hard enough at the best of times, especially hard when it's the first race of the season, and you still don't really understand your car. Adding to the mix, a very different circuit in terms of characteristics to Bahrain, where they did the testing and very different weather conditions, not just from Bahrain but also from what they typically know at Melbourne. Saturday is going to be extremely hot, And then Sunday it is meant to rain, potentially stormy as well. This is, I think, from the Australian meteorological whatever. They've predicted a chance of rain on Sunday at 95% at least. Chance of any rain happening doesn't mean it's going to be especially heavy. It's likely to be showery, and it's potentially going to be thunderstorming. It could be heavy as well. This is pretty mega. Even Formula One themselves are suggesting that the chance of rain is going to be greater than 80%. So this is a pretty big deal right now, and it's looking more than likely by the day that we are going to have a wet season opening in Australia. That sounds like absolute chaos to me. Forget the off-track drama for a second. This is the Sky Sports F1 panel, where the real analysis happens. A lineup of commentators, analysts, and pundits ready to break down every twist and turn of the season. And let's be honest, some familiar faces are making headlines for better or worse. Let's dive in real quick, because I know most of you are locked into this feed. From major team developments to behind-the-scenes buzz, there's plenty to unpack. Buckle up. This F1 season is already shaping up to be a wild ride.